Yeah. We show up after the clock, coffee gone, boards unlocked. You move your night, I move my mind. Late to chess, but right on time. Tell me what you saw before the queen fell hard. Every bad idea turns into a spark. Late to chess, we make a mess, then we make sense. Late to chess, one more game, one more defense. Late to chess.
Welcome back to Late Chess Podcast. This solo episode, we are going to be doing what I refer to as either a State of the Union update or uh, one of us being put on the sofa. Doctor's not a big fan of those, but that's okay. I can do it to myself. And I thought we'd go over real quick about what I've been up to, where my game is. I've gotten a few questions from some listeners that I kind of put together into a little bit of an outline. So maybe we'll be able to get through this and hopefully it'll be able to help you guys with where we're at. So I think if you look at how my performance is in terms of ELO, I have a tendency to look like I'm not getting any better. And that's really just a function of not playing a whole lot. And I end up studying more and playing less. So, newsflash, if you don't play, your ELO does not go up, but it also does not go down. So it looks like I'm at a plateau, but I'm really not at a plateau. I'm just not playing. So, one of the things that I've recently been trying to do is I've been trying to have a goal of playing more games and perhaps studying less. So, the origination of this aspect is really that I do like studying, but I had a business trip that was basically about a month of continuous travel with lots of driving. So it really was impractical for me to play any over the board games, and it was really difficult for me to schedule things because my time zones kept changing. So I ended up doing a whole bunch of studying, and we'll get into some of what I did. So um, that led to this higher degree of studying versus play, and I'm trying to bring that back into balance. One thing that I do find that helps me a lot is going through annotations of my own games. And I have a long process that hopefully I'll be able to get together with somebody to go over one of these as an example, at least for what I'm doing. And we'll see if there's better ways to do it. Plus, it will be illustrative of what I'm doing and hopefully will encourage you to A, laugh at my bad play, and B, see the value of doing these types of annotations and analysis of your own game, because that's where you can learn. And it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. I do both. If it's a game that I care about, if it's a game that matters, meaning a long game or a game against somebody that I want to perform well, maybe not win, but like say the doctor. I do an annotation of all those games. So I have a current backlog on those. So I'm going to be spending a good amount of time doing some annotations. And I have a couple different processes. There's one long process. The annotation takes about 2-3 hours, maybe more. It's taken much more sometimes. And then I have another one that's kind of quicker process, which I use for games where they may be shorter games or they may be games where I'm working on a specific aspect of my play. And I just look at where things change greatly during the game. So if I lose a little bit of the balance of the game, I'm a little bit up and then I'm a little bit down, or if I go from a little bit down to a little bit more down, something like half a pawn, maybe even a full pawn. Sometimes I don't worry about those moves. I worry about the moves where there's a big change, a dramatic change. It could be my change or it could be my opponent's change. I try to learn from both. So when I was away, I was starting to feel really bad. And I think I've talked about it on the podcast with the doctor and maybe even with a couple of our guests, that I was having trouble initially just getting out of the opening, especially with black. When I was playing black, I was playing If the opponent played e4, I would play e5 as my first move, and then I would just basically get killed. Um, it was I don't know what it was about it. The other thing was when I was white, if I played e4, um, best by test and all that good um, stuff. If my opponent played c5, meaning that we were entering some type of Sicilian, I was losing like, I think I did the math one time. I think it was 90% almost. I think it was like high 80s, maybe 12% I was winning against the Sicilian. And I just, the development, taking control of the center and castling to protect my king. What I thought that meant and what it meant against the Sicilian was vastly different than what would happen. And I was ending up just getting smushed in the beginning of the game and never really getting to the fun part, the middle of the game. So while I was doing my traveling, I decided I was going to take a deep dive and try to look at some more opening theory, not looking for developing a full repertoire, not looking for very much depth, but just trying to get past the first four, five, six moves and get to the middle part of the game, which is the part that I enjoy the most, and working on that and seeing if I could do that. So I did a few different fairly deep dives into a variety of openings, several of which I just looked at and said, nope, this is not for me. And eventually I settled on a couple. So I have what I consider at least a starting point for playing black, and I have another starting point for playing white. What I ended up thinking about was if I am playing against somebody who's better than me, which is not very difficult to do, if I play into an opening where they know the theory as well or better than I do, then why would I choose to do that? So I started looking for things that were a little bit offbeat, a little bit different, and sometimes not the normal e4, e5 or d4, d5 or the typical plans. And ideally, they would be fairly short and not too deep in terms of the number of moves and the number of variations. And specifically, what I ended up doing was I looked at, and it doesn't really matter which ones I chose. What I think is important is I looked at what my plans were coming out of the opening, what my available attacking plans or things to be, things that I should be aware of from my opponent, what could they do to me during the game, and then kind of typical middle game strategies, things that the opponents will do, things that the opponents could do, things that I could do or should do, and then try to just understand those. And I didn't really worry about move one is this, move two is that, move three is this, move four is that, and 15, 16, 20 moves down the road. That can come later. All I want to do is get to a middle game and kind of have the beginnings of a plan. And that was where I ended up. So I have an opening for white, I have an opening for black. Conveniently, my black opening can work with all of my opponent's moves, so that's kind of nice. So I really only have one black opening, is because sometimes people will say when you need to have an opening versus when you're playing black, you need to have an opening versus one e4, and you have to have one versus one d4, and you might have to have one versus the other things that they could do, kind of three or at least two. Well, mine kind of works both. So that's a joy for me. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a basis for going forward and see if I can play, a few hundred games this way, both over the board and online, and then see how I do. And once I get the experience with that, and then I'll look to add something to my repertoire, be it another white opening or another black opening, and have a whole bunch of them identified. I've got a list that's way too long, and I'll probably never live long enough to do them all, but this will be like the basis, and then I'll work around it going forward. So, one of the other things that I've been working on that's important to my game is I've noticed that I have an issue with calculation and tactics. I'm getting much better at seeing tactics for my own, and I'm even starting to get better at seeing tactics for my opponents. So I'm working on that, and I'm doing like a daily half hour minimum on tactics. Sometimes they're a hard tactic that I have to like really think about, and it could take me, 30 minutes. not many of those. And then sometimes they're just a sequence of short, quick hitters. They could be one move tactics. They could be a couple move tactics, but they're not terribly difficult. They're kind of I'm trying to make it more of a recognition of the tactic as opposed to figuring it out on the board because I found that I was figuring out too many things on the board and I was actually wearing out. And then towards the end of the game, I'd make a stupid blunder and then lose things. At the same time, I'm also doing calculation. So those to me are different exercises. So that is, I'm keeping them separate. Tactics to me in the methodology that I'm applying, tactics to me are the memorized patterns, and calculation is things that I have to figure out. So I have puzzles for both of those. Um, I do most of my work with books, but I have been using some videos. But in order for me to use a video, it doesn't count to watch. I love Gotham chess, but it doesn't count as studying if I'm just watching and enjoying it and having a good time with it, whomever's video it is. If I'm not with a board or at least taking notes, it doesn't count. So that includes Chessable, that includes YouTube, it includes anything. The other thing that I've been working on is I've been working on my visualization. My visualization is kind of good, but tails off rather quickly. Meaning, I can visualize one move, two moves, like the opponent, my move, the opponent's move, or vice versa, and then things start to get fuzzy as we get deeper and deeper. And I think part of it is um, I've noticed when I do my visualization, I'm actually looking at the board, be it online or physical board. And I start to have ghost pieces where either the piece is no longer there, but I still think it's there, or the piece isn't there and I forget about it. So what I've got to do is I think I've noticed that a lot of the better players, when I'm watching them, when they're doing their visualization, they seem to look away from the board, usually up and to the right. I've noticed. So I think what that does is it prevents my visual eyes from clouding my mental visual pattern. So it kind of clears the board. I don't think I'm ever going to be anything like they see on the Queen's Gambit and have pieces that are three-dimensional moving on my ceiling, but you know, a guy can dream. Okay. So the other thing that I've noticed about my game is that my mind, I'm calling it mind twisting. When I start thinking deep, when I start going 5, 6 moves or more into the future, sometimes I'll get so involved with it, I'll overlook stuff. And that could mean missing an opponent's resource that I just don't see, or it could mean, like say, I know I can't move this piece because it's attacked by my opponent's piece. And then I'll do this 5, 10 move calculation. And then I'll be like, okay, that's what it is. And then I'll make the move and I'll have just I know the piece is under attack, but I'll just forget about it and I'll play the other move as if it isn't. So I've got to do that. I've been doing some work and research on the mind, and it seems like there's a limited number of slots where you can keep track of things at one time. Depends on the person, depends on your training, depends on your natural aptitude. But it seems like there's somewhere 5 to 7 slots seems to be kind of the midpoint range for most people. I'm sure there's people who are much, much better, and I'm sure I've met a few people who it's much, much worse. So I'm working on trying to do better with that, and that's kind of a separate deep dive that I'm working on. So that's an area that I would say is very early into my study, and I'm not putting a lot of time in this. So at the end, I'm probably going to have to get into how I split my time. So we'll add that to my list of the outline. Okay, so I also noticed, and I've noticed this with a few friends, and if you don't have any chess friends, I highly recommend them. They're very much fun. I ended up getting too worried about my rating and not playing, being too worried about my rating, which makes no sense because you want to play chess because it's fun and you want to play chess That's why we play chess. So I had to get over this rating issue. And I think part of it is there's a pride factor. Part of it, there's a self-worth factor that's not very prevalent in me, but I've heard about it. Humans tend to have that. I tend to not be that way. But there's also a comparative aspect to it, which I don't think is beneficial. So I've done a lot of deep thinking about the rating. And not only does the rating not really matter, it doesn't really matter how well or how my chess thinking or playing has improved. It matters how I performed against another person whose rating is also variable and I can't really control. So I am looking to play more online playing now. And I'm also looking at playing more over the board games now. So I've been playing a ton of online games, both against humans and bots. And I've also been playing some correspondence games with some friends. And I've also been, uh, I have a electronic chessboard, which I can play against people online or against different bots or just practice. And I've been putting in a good amount of time on that every day. So it's starting to get me a bit sharper. And I think just playing makes you sharper. So I think that may be something else that people could do. The other thing was I realized I have way too many resources. So just going back to what my thought process was, is I'm obviously a member of the chess dojo and I get a lot out of it. The chess dojo has kept me fairly focused. And then we started adding in live classes, which has been great fun. There's actually more classes than I can consume. I could probably consume them all, but then I would never get to play. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to prioritize dojo work on a daily basis as the base or the fundamentals, and then I give myself any other time above that, and that's usually around 2 hours a day. And then any time above that, I've earned to do whatever I want. So if I want to do some opening work, I do some opening work. If I want to do a course on tactics or a course on calculation or a course on visualization or read a book on whatever, end games, I do that. But I think I let it get away from myself and I ended up having way more books, way more courses, probably way more books than courses. Um, so I had to trim down. Now I'm not as hardcore as the doctor is. He is trimmed down to like 4 things. I still have too many to do, but I've at least prioritized them as I have a list of chessable courses that are the must do immediate kind of. If I could wave a magic wand, I wish they were done already. And then I have another ones that are very, very good. And then I have like 3 or 4 levels. And then I have one level that's just these things are way too hard and I'm not there yet. So I have a whole folder of chessable courses that are just way too hard for me. I didn't read what they were, or I misunderstood what they were, or I just got on a clicking frenzy and bought too many. So that's what it is. So I tried to trim down. I'm probably in the single digits now. I'm not too diversified. It's not like a stock. You want to kind of focus. And I'm being very consistent. So the other thing I noticed is that the books that I have, and we already mentioned the chessable courses and other courses that I have, I'm focusing more on the ones that are lower level. I'm not focusing on the higher level. I'm not doing anything that's really, really hard or really, really in depth or advanced. I'm looking at, in the chessable land, I'm looking at the beginner courses, maybe the introduction. I don't remember to have an introduction one, but the bottom 2 levels at max and focusing more on the ones that are lower level as if you're a beginner. And I'm not very upset that I'm focused on things that say I'm a beginner because, my elo justifies that. And it is going up, but it is not triple digits on chess.com yet. It's getting close though. And online, and sorry, over the board, it's also not triple digits, but I also haven't played. So who knows? If I were to guess, it's probably a bit higher, but we'll see. So focus on fundamentals is how I've always approached sports and how I've approached learning things. So I want to make sure my fundamentals are there. The other thing that I do is I have notebooks. I have notebooks for every book that I have, and I have a notebook that I call my puzzle book. So every time I'm doing these tactics, every time I do a puzzle, if I miss it or if I'm not satisfied with the way I thought about the process, and it took me what I perceive as too long to see the answer, I view that as a weakness in my chess tactics puzzle solving system. So what I do is I take a picture of that book puzzle. Sorry, take a picture of the puzzle, and then I have a little printer which prints out stickers. So I have a puzzle book notebook where I put in these stickers on a page, and I put for me, I do the left page is white to play, and the right page is black to play, and I keep putting the puzzles together into my own personal puzzle book, and then I go through them about every month or two and go through them until they are uh, natural to me or memorized. So that is one of the tricks I've done for my tactics, and it has worked pretty well. In terms of the elo focus and balance versus improving, I've done a good job about that, and I'm trying to reduce the stress. So last thing I wanted to get into time splits. So my time split, like I said, I've got a little notebook here. I've got a little sticker on my laptop, and it says the first 15 minutes is hard tactics of the day. And then the second 15 minutes is more fundamental, easier tactics. So you have 30 minutes of tactics minimum. Sometimes I go more, sometimes I go less. I would like to play around 60 minutes, and that includes annotation and review of the games. And then 30 minutes more of like true analysis, not just annotating. And then the rest of the time, I can look at openings, end games, a couple different books, some different courses that I'm working on. And that's kind of how I spend my day. And that gives me a basis of about 2 hours. Dojo work in there. So there's a few books that I'm looking at finishing so I can change cohorts. I've got plenty of elo to change cohorts, but I'm just not done with the dojo work. So I'm working on those. And the one thing that I have noticed is now that I'm doing some of the dojo work, like one of the books is Susan Polgar's Learning Chess. I happen to have it in front of me. Learning Chess the Right Way. I don't know if that shows up. Book three, it's on mastering defensive techniques. The first time I went through this book, it was part of the curriculum I had, and it would take me a very long time to go through these puzzles. And now I'm going through them, and it's, you know, sub seconds, usually like 2 or 3 seconds if I check my work. So I guess all the tactical work has helped and is working well for my game. So my elo may not show it except on Lichess. My Lichess rating is, I think, too high right now. I don't think I really believe it. My chess.com, I haven't played very many games there. I think I played one game in the past 2, 3 months. So it's going up a little bit, but it went up because I played 1 or 2 games. Um, my over the board game, I haven't played an over the board game since I think March, maybe somewhere around there. That feels about right. Before I had that long business trip. So my elo is fairly static, but I think my game is better. I hope this makes sense. If you guys had any questions, oh, one question that came in was one of the dojo principles involves the plus minus equals. So plus being a player that's much, much better than you. Um, that could be a couple hundred elo to many hundred elo. Uh, Working with them or talking to them or playing them, um, maybe even sparring positions with them, things like that. And then the equals is usually easier to find. That's someone who's about your level and you can work together. Obviously, the doctor and I do this fairly often, not as often as we should. We've let life get in the way a little bit too much, and we need to get back to that. And then minuses. Sometimes you sit there and say, why would I want to work with somebody who's not as good as me? Why would I want to play with them? Sometimes you learn more by teaching than you do by studying. So it forces you to clearly communicate what you've learned, clearly try to help someone else understand it. And in doing that, you understand it more. So I've got a couple people that I play fairly routinely who are a little bit lower rated than I am. And then I've got a couple people who I play. Actually, I've got somebody at work now who's just started, like literally just started playing the game a couple days ago. So I've kind of taken it as adopting a couple people, and I'm trying to add that into my daily or weekly routines and help them out a little bit as best I can. And I find it to be fun. It helps clear up my thinking and communication of what I've been thinking, and maybe convert some knowledge into skill, and also helps grow the sport. So we had one person write in saying, "Hey, you guys never talk about the plus minus equals." Well, I just talked about it a little bit, and I sent you a response saying, "Hey, if you're interested, maybe I haven't talked to the doctor about this yet. He's going to kill me, but when was the last time we didn't have a competition? Maybe if we find two people interested in being minuses, if the doctor has time and interest, we could have a little contest as to whose protege does better against the others." And obviously there would be bragging rights. And I don't know, we'll come up with something. So doctor, if you ever do listen to an episode where you're not on, what do you think? You want to play? You come into the big dance? Anyway, trying to get a short episode in, heading out to family vacation in a couple of days, and wanted to make sure we had an episode for every week, and we will continue to strive to do that. So if you have any questions, send them in to late2chess@gmail.com, and the 2 is a number. And look forward to hearing from you. If we covered this and it was helpful, great. If you like this type of episode, it's a little bit more fun when the doctor and I are both in there. We can go back and forth. Let us know, and maybe you'll convince the doctor that these aren't so bad. And I always thought that if he didn't like these episodes, then he should get to pick on my game, because I don't really care. It's fine. And then hopefully I've got a surprise coming where we're going to go through. So we talked about the annotation and analysis of a game with someone who is much more highly rated than me, which, let's be fair, isn't that hard. And we'll see what we can do. So I think you guys have put in overtime listening to me way too long, and hope this episode was helpful. And let us know, late2chess@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you next week, hopefully with some analysis. Thanks, everybody.
We show up after the clock, coffee gone, boards unlocked. You move your night, I move my mind. Late to chess, but right on time. Tell me what you saw before the queen fell hard. Every bad idea turns into a spark. Late to chess, we make a mess, then we make sense. Late to chess, one more game, one more defense. Late to chess. Pressure slipping fast. You swear that advantage can't last. We laugh when the opening